Eric, welcome to the Astroben podcast. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to chatting to you. I was at the IAC in Paris last year, the International Astronautical Congress, and part of the reason I was there was to sort of network and find potential guests to come on the podcast. And quite a few people said to me, "Oh, you must get Eric Ingram on the podcast." So it had to be done. So thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, it
What
should
were
be
you?
fun, and I'll have to make sure I pay them adequately for their services.
Referral fees or something. Um, so let's start with the beginning. Tell me a bit about yourself and what's your background to the space industry.
Yeah, well, it all started on a cold winter's day. No, I, have always been interested in space and the space industry. There was never any like specific moment where that became reality. It just kind of was always an intrinsic thing. Studied a lot of science in high school. Um, read a few books that got my mind racing, and then in college or university, I tried to find things that were as close to space as possible. So I did a bachelor's in physics, where I was researching lidar systems. Technically, it was for oceanography, but I told myself it was for space because might as well be. Um, and I also founded a chapter of SEDS, or Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, and that's how I really started networking within the industry. Similar thing at grad school. Went to University of Houston, where I got most of a master's degree in electrical engineering, and then did patch antenna design research while I was there, for satellites specifically. So that one was legitimate. And then worked in the space industry right after that. Got a job at an asteroid mining startup called Deep Space Industries, where I was working on a low level. I was just a grunt engineer working on some um, subsystem development stuff, and that's actually where I found out I was a terrible engineer. So I then was like, well, I can probably do stuff better and more effectively. So I was in the nonprofit sector for a few years, in and out of the space industry, and then was at the FAA Office of Commercial Space Transportation, doing licensing and regulating of the launch and reentry industry, and then founded my current company, Scout, in early 2019. And of course, I do a bunch of stuff outside of that. Not sure how much you want to dive into the extracurriculars, but I, uh, I'm wearing many hats.
Yeah, no, I want to hear about all the hats. But let's start with Scout.
All the hats.
Yeah, all the hats. Scout seems to be your baby, which is super cool. And you obviously started it in 2019, just before, uh, a period that I try not to say the name. It was COVID. How did that affect your business? Were you kind of optimized to be online anyway, and you sort of just adjusted, or how much of a problem was it that COVID happened, or did you manage to sort of navigate through without being affected too much?
Uh, it was a huge problem. We did not factor in a global pandemic into our business model. Um, Founded the company in early 2019. I actually left my nice government job in October 2019 to go full time on Scout. Um, and we were just kicking off our first fundraise as a company in, it was going to be spring of 2020. So we were ramping up to that in March, or excuse me, in February of 2020. And then, of course, March hit and the world shut down. So that was really suboptimal in the best way possible. Um, and we were fortunate enough to get lucky. There was only two of us, me and my co-founder Sergio, who's my CTO. We were able to get an R&D contract from the state of Virginia, um, for some technology development, and we're also able to get one investor, um, um, prior to the world shutting down. So basically, we were able to survive on that as a company for about a year, while the world was dealing with all of that. Um, and there were many times where we came close to just being like, all right, this is just, the timing isn't great. There's a lot of things working against us here. And we almost threw in the towel, but every time we got to the brink of that happening, something really good would happen, and it would be like, all right, well, let's just keep going for another 6 months and see what happens. And that was kind of just what kept happening. And then we were fortunate enough to survive through that period, and then um, in like late 2021, that's when we really started getting traction, and 2022 was amazing for the company, and we landed a bunch of government contracts and commercial. We have a few commercial customers, and the team has grown, and it took some time to get traction and to actually make significant progress, but um, it's never really like a straight path or like an easy road to get there.
No, sure. It's certainly the peaks and troughs of startup life. Well, I think you've done incredibly well. I mean, 2019 is not so long ago, but yeah, you've done really well. But tell me, what does Scout do? And is Scout an acronym for something like everything else in the space industry, or what's the meaning of the company and what does it do?
Yeah, and for instance, just to comment on what you said, 2019 feels simultaneously like yesterday and a century ago, and I'm not sure how to rectify those two feelings, but the combination of the pandemic and startup life really just messes up your whole time scale. So, Scout is a company that is working on building vision and understanding capabilities for the future space industry. So we have um, systems we're developing that provide capabilities for spacecraft for autonomous relative navigation. So you can think of like autonomous cars for the sensors and software they use to self-drive, similar to that, but for complex spacecraft maneuvers. And we're also developing systems to monitor and track other things in space. So it's a little bit of two sides of that that utilize very similar technology, but enable very different, somewhat related, but different capabilities. And as far as Scout as an acronym, um, it is unofficially an acronym, and we're not sure what came first, either the acronym itself or the name, but it unofficially stands for Spacecraft Observing and Understanding Things. It's kind of just a bit of a joking acronym that just literally explains what we do. Um, so yeah, it is unofficially an acronym.
And how did you meet your business partner? Is it someone you've worked with in the past, or did you bump into them at a conference? And how did you decide to work together? Was it a sort of having a couple of beers and hey, we should go for this, or what's the origin story of how Scout came about?
Um, so I actually met Sergio. We worked together in the same engineering team at Deep Space Industries back in like the 2013-ish time frame. And we worked together for about a year and a half, give or take. And then we kind of went separate ways. He found out he was a really good engineer and kept doing that. I found out I was a really bad engineer, so I went into other things, more managerial, more um, regulatory and policy related. Um, Good news is I still speak engineer, so that's useful. I just don't understand what they're talking about. Um, so then when I founded Scout, or was going to found Scout in 2019, I basically reached out to him a few months into it and said, "Hey, I need a technical person to help me do this stuff." And it took several conversations, um, and I was able to convince him to jump in, and so that's kind of how it turned out. That's the short version, at least. But it was a little bit of me convincing, a little bit of opportunistic timing, and yeah, that's how we got there.
Fantastic. And tell me more about the transportation side. So is this are these new theoretical modes of transport? I was reading about space tugs, which sounds pretty exciting. So maybe we could start with the concept of space tugs and how are they or how would they be used in the space industry?
Absolutely. And I do want to state that my company does have flight heritage. We actually flew our first payload to space in 2021 on board the Orbit Fab Tenzing spacecraft. Orbit Fab is a on-orbit refueling company. Their tagline is "Gas stations in space," and on that mission, we're helping them with relative navigation, remote proximity operations is what we call it in the space industry. Um, and we're working with another company who's hired us for two missions called Momentous. They are a space tug company, and so we're providing optical relative navigation capabilities as well, similar to Orbit Fab, via our Scout Vision payload, which is kind of just a plug and play eyes for your spacecraft. Um, so space tugs, or orbital transfer vehicles, I think is their official title right now, are basically spacecraft that are big pickup trucks that are just moving satellites in space from one spot to another, either straight from a rocket. So they're either on board the space tug, on board a bigger rocket. So then the rocket deploys the space tug, and the space tug maneuvers elsewhere to drop off all the small payloads. Or those same space tugs will go and pick up a satellite that's already in orbit and move it to a different place in orbit. In order to do that, you really need, because those maneuvers are very complex. It's not an easy thing to go grab something in space. So you really need good sensors and software to be able to handle that. And you need, as these maneuvers become more complex, autonomous capability to do that. So removing humans in the loop from those sorts of things. And so Scout's RPO capability via our Scout Vision systems are something that or is a product that can enable that.
And what's the vision for that product? So do you see it on all sorts of satellites autonomously docking and undocking and resupplying with companies like Orbit Fab on their spacecraft? How do you see that bit of technology fitting into the space infrastructure?
Got you. So that's part of a bigger problem set. So I'm going to kind of combine a few themes here. Um, Space is super crowded already. And we know from projections and from um, capabilities that are already online, it's going to get a lot more crowded over the next few years. We're going to be launching tens of thousands of satellites, maybe up to 100,000 satellites, all within the next decade. The current way we operate in space just will not be able to keep up with the needs that that much more densely packed traffic will need. So for the Scout Vision set of products specifically, you're going to need to be able to perform more complex maneuvers in space autonomously. Right now, most spacecraft operations are done with a human in the loop. So spacecraft does something, human says, okay, we're good. Spacecraft does next thing, human says, okay, we're good, and that sort of thing. But if you're in a very complicated environment with a lot of things going on, and you're doing very complicated tasks like refueling or rebuilding something in space or attaching new propulsion systems to an old satellite or moving things from one place to another, that's stuff where you're having a lot of very minute and quick maneuvers that you just can't safely have human in the loop for. And so we see ourselves as an enabler and a capabilities provider to spacecraft performing these sorts of things. So we provide basically plug and play uh, local situational awareness is kind of what we describe it as. So, we put eyes on spacecraft and not allow them to see those things around them and to be able to um, maneuver relative to them, either towards them, away from them, or whatever. Um, and then we can also talk about our space domain awareness and space traffic management side of the house, which are products that we're bringing on board um, starting hopefully by early next year.
Fantastic. So So space domain awareness. So obviously that's being aware of what's around you. You know how far away it is, how fast it's moving, that sort of thing. Um, a lot of people talk about space junk, and I've had a lot of people on the podcast talk about it. So you already talked about how busy low Earth orbit is going to be with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of new satellites being added over probably a few years. How will Scout's technology help ensure that space junk doesn't become a existential threat and a sort of loop of satellites crashing into each other, and one day all our phones stop working because there's no satellites anymore. um, yeah, tell me about your concern about space junk and what Scout can do to kind of help keep that as low risk as possible.
Yeah, and your cell phone not working is probably the least of our worries if we have that sort of cascading um, uh, effect of debris in orbit. The best way to deal with space debris is to prevent it from ever happening. Because being proactive and preventative is way easier than having to clean it up. You can ask any of the space debris cleaning companies or anybody work on that. That's a very tough problem to solve. So what we're doing is we want to be basically the primary data provider for in-space awareness data. So from our OWL systems or other vision systems we have in space that are looking for other objects in space and studying them, be it for space traffic management purposes, which is kind of what you're speaking to, we want to help complete the data set that exists by providing the information we collect to analytics platforms who are already doing space traffic monitoring and helping different spacecraft operators maneuver their satellites away from danger and to identify and track debris or derelict satellites or everything in between, maybe even UFOs, who knows. And We can then help them combine that data with ground-based data. So basically, the company is looking up from the ground at the traffic going overhead, and we can be, in space looking either down or sideways and help get a better sight picture on that. And we can have more real-time or close to real-time data and data from multiple angles. So you can have three-dimensional data. So being able to track an object in space from two different points in space and from the ground gives you amazing clarity and information about what's going on than just having a single tracking point on the ground or even multiple just from the ground. Different angles of observation is going to be super important to controlling the, I don't want to say crazy, but the much more complex space environment that we're going to be experiencing. And in order to keep um, space sustainable and safe for everyone to operate in, we're all going to need to work together and cooperatively to make sure that happens. And being proactive, as I mentioned, is the best way to make sure that space stays sustainable and safe to operate in.
Yeah, and when you're working in 3D, that cooperation becomes even more complicated. But we've talked about sort of Orbit Fab and a few other companies that you've worked with. Uh, Tell me about the partnerships or collaborations that Scout has formed since you've started. How do you decide who to work with? Is it kind of who you've worked with in the past, or because it's such a new economy and you're going to be working with some established players like NASA. I guess everyone has to work with NASA in some way as the kind of auditors of everything that goes into space from the US especially. But what's your approach to sort of partnerships and collaborations? How do you, as a startup, how have you found that? Have you found there to be any challenges, or it's quite niche, the space industry? So how have you found that sort of in the startup world?
We are very open to collaboration and we try to work closely with as many different entities as possible. We are building an economy right now, and we try to break down as many barriers between potential customers, potential partners, even competitors as possible. We have regular conversations with most of the companies that would be thrown in a bucket as potential competitors to us. You mentioned partnerships back in, I think, September. We announced a partnership with Privateer, who is another space domain awareness company. I think Moriba Jaws is a very prolific speaker in this topic. And, we're working with them to try to build better products to manage traffic in space, manage debris in space. Um, we have previously had other partnerships with companies like Benchmark Space Systems. They develop propulsion and mobility solution systems for satellites in space, and that's another system that will need eyes to make that happen. So, we're extremely open to cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships. You mentioned the government. We have very good relationship with the government on the civil side and the defense side, and we are working and have worked several government contracts developing out technology and solutions for needs that they have as well, because they're users um, of this environment as well, right? And so everybody has skin in the game, and everybody has um, needs to make sure that we're working together.
Can you tell us about any exciting upcoming projects or missions that you can speak to for Scout? Anything that's coming up this
I,
year
I'm just
that
gonna
yeah, fire, give me some. Give me
I'm
something.
I'm gonna tell you all of my secrets right now.
Good.
So any spies out there, corporate uh, espionage, here's your chance. No, I'm not. I'm gonna be very cagey about this answer, and I apologize. Um, we're as I mentioned before, we're working at developing next generation space domain awareness capabilities. Drop in, plug and play systems, mostly software, but wrapped in necessary hardware systems that can go on board spacecraft and enable them to be space domain awareness data collectors. We have a system that we'll be formally announcing later this year that we've kind of done a soft rollout of called OWL, um, that we're getting a lot of traction with potential customers, um, that we're hoping to have several exciting announcements about in the coming months. But for right now, can't say anything. But there's a lot of optimism there. And as I mentioned before, we're working with Momentous currently, and we'll be on two of their upcoming missions. So hopefully those will be going up sometime this year, and we'll be able to start collecting a lot of data and experience with more of our systems on orbit. Um, Outside of that, there's probably some other stuff we'll be announcing soon, but I'm just going to be cagey about it and not answer it because
It's fine. I want to
I
press
got to
you on it,
build
but
the I got to
I
build the
completely get
tension.
it.
I got to build the tension.
Yeah, of course, and it's the space industry, isn't it? So it's a tight network of people all trying to do business in space. Um, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about the space industry, or space transportation? Do you think there's a bit of a kind of old school? You just think of the public more generally. If you say space transportation to them, they just think of Star Trek, Star Wars. Or do you think that's shifting a bit as we see, private companies taking loads to orbit?
I think it's shifting a bit, but probably not rapidly enough. I think if you mention space to most people, they'll just say NASA.
Mm.
The closest they'll get to commercial space is SpaceX. Um, but beyond that, most people have no awareness of what's going on in the space industry. And as a whole, I think we do a very bad job of marketing and promoting the space industry outside of the space industry. I've mentioned this before, and I've kind of jokingly said it, but I think there should be like a marketing coalition of a bunch of commercial space companies that get together and just start a generalized commercial space industry marketing campaign. It could be like the got milk of space. I don't know if that might just be an American thing. I don't know. Um, but starting a campaign that just promotes the industry as a whole. Um, and I think that would help a lot. And I totally forgot the beginning of your question. So Let me know what I
No, no,
missed there.
no, you didn't miss anything. That was perfect. I wanna leave time for your extracurricular stuff, so let's touch on those quickly. Um, I know about Astro Access, so maybe start with that, and then anything else you're involved in, and how that sort of fits in with your day job at Scout.
Gotcha. So yeah, we'll start with Astro Access. That's an organization I've been involved with for about 2 years now. It is working to make spaceflight accessible to anyone, so that if you do get the opportunity to go to space, something like a physical disability, visual impairment, hearing impairment doesn't prevent you from being able to go. And we have a brilliant team that we've brought together, including ambassadors, of which I'm a part of as well, which are people with disabilities selected to go on um, parabolic flights in the zero G aircraft, which is a plane that goes up and down and simulates microgravity, where we actually test solutions for allowing people with disabilities to function better in space or to prove out misconceptions about um, people with disabilities in space. For instance, one of the biggest concerns from several human spaceflight companies about having people with physical and visual impairment disabilities going on suborbital space flights is their ability to get back in their seat with their seatbelt on in a timely fashion. Because you get 4 to 6 minutes to float around up there, but then you got to get back to your seat and strapped in because that gravity starts coming back, and that could be a bad day if you don't make it in your seat in time. Um, so what we did on one of the experiments that I was a lead on in the most recent flight, which is December of last year, was actually testing entering and exiting analogous suborbital flight seats in the zero G plane, and the ability for us to get in and out of those seats, put the 5-point harness on with enough time to be safe for reentry. And I don't know if we have the quantitative numbers done yet for that, or at least I haven't seen them. But we were extremely successful in that, and we, at least qualitatively, as of right now, I'm sure we have quantitatively as well, but we've basically proven that that's a non-issue. Um, we had several of us participating. We made it on Good Morning America in the States, so that was pretty cool. And it's things like that that we're working for to um, basically move this forward, because we're at the very beginning of human spaceflight. If you look at the timeline of humanity's existence, like, we're just at the beginning. And so we can start designing in all of these solutions that we're coming up with for tactile graphics and for lighting systems and for being able to use sign language in microgravity at different orientations and things. We can bake all of that in now, all the design changes we need, because that doesn't exist yet, right? Like, how many commercial space stations are up there, right? We still have time to design these in from the get-go and not retrofit like we have to do on Earth.
And yeah, it's fascinating, and I'll put details in the show notes so people can see you going zero G, which looks super fun, and hopefully I'll have a chance to do it one day. It looks amazing. Yeah, tell me about anything else you're involved in as well, because I know you're involved in the Space Frontier Foundation. Um, yeah, tell me a bit about that and what else you're up to.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm on the board of the Space Frontier Foundation. That is an advocacy organization in the space industry, just working to making humanity a spacefaring civilization. Been around for, I think, 30 plus years, and has had a lot of wins historically in moving a lot of policy and messaging forward, both in and out of the industry. And there, many big names in the space industry are what we call advocates of the Space Frontier Foundation, and that's like a tier of member that has contributed a lot to the industry, or will contribute a lot to the industry, and that's kind of a distinction we like to make. Um, and additionally to that, I'm on the board for an organization called Together International, which is a group that provides resources for entrepreneurs with disabilities. So they also do accelerator programs for entrepreneurs with disabilities, and they're a pretty great um, resource. When I started my company, I mean, I guess I should have said this before, but for awareness, I have a physical disability. I use a wheelchair in my everyday life. When I founded my company, I was looking for resources with entrepreneurs with disabilities, and I found almost nothing. Together International was the only program I found, which was crazy to me. But I, interacted with them when my company was young, and now that I am a bit more weathered, let's say, I'm now sitting on their board and helping them grow as an organization. Um, Outside of that, on the casual side, I play wheelchair rugby. It's pretty fun, full contact sport in wheelchairs. Tell your friends, it's the best sport you've never seen. And also, I got my pilot's license like over a decade ago, but then kind of didn't fly for a while. So working on getting back into the pilot seat and all that fun stuff. So clearly, I've
That's
got a lot of
great.
free time.
Yeah, you got so much going on, and it's so inspirational, and I'm sure to people listening as well. I do love wheelchair rugby. I only really watch it at the Paralympics because they don't put it on regular TV much the rest of the time. But it's brutal, like it's full on. I just before you go, I think, as I said, you are inspirational to lots of different verticals, from like entrepreneurs to people with disabilities looking to dream of going to space. What advice would you give to young people interested in pursuing a career in the space industry? I'm sure you've been asked this many times before, but I'm just kind of I'm interested, especially after your last few years of building Scout. So on the entrepreneurship side, what advice would you give to people that may have an idea that they want to do in space, of starting their own company?
Yeah, a little bit twofold. One is just network, right? If you're not involved in the space industry, go to space conferences. Like go attend some stuff. Some of them you can attend for free if you volunteer, if you're like a college student. So look into that. Join some groups that are part of the space industry. I mentioned if you're a student, go join SEDS. That's an amazing resource. And just attend things, build up your network. As far as like entrepreneurship and things go, um, go try things. If you have an idea, go test it. Like spend a weekend, write a business plan, go talk to potential customers and say, "Hey, is this worth doing?" And then, if you get a lot of yeses, then maybe put a little bit more time into it and kind of just see how things go. But just go test things, go ask questions, go see if you're going the right direction, and then if you are, put a little more effort to it and a little more effort into it, and keep progressing that way. And if you get a lot of no's and they're consistent, maybe take their advice too. Um, so that's kind of my general advice. It's hard to get specific, but um, network and go try things.
That's excellent advice. Eric Ingram, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.